everyone, my name is Jen, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my February wrap-up. Today, we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in February, all the ones that I read, all the ones that I DNF'd, ones I hated, ones I loved. You guys get the gist. This month, I ended up reading 16 books, which is so many books. I don't know what came over me, but it was a great time. It was a great time. As always, read across a variety of genres, and for once had a complete range of ratings as well. So I ended up reading 2 YA fantasies, 6 regular adult fantasies, 4 adult sci-fis, 1 middle grade, 2 regular literary fiction, and 1 romance book. I had 1 1.5 star, 2 2.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 2 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, 4 5 stars, 1 unrated, and 2 DNFs this month. Let's get into it. This month I started off incredibly strong with a 5-star, and that is because I read The Temple of No God. This is the sequel to Hall of Smoke by Hannah Long, so this continues the story that was set up in Hall of Smoke, but it is a companion sequel, so it does follow the same character, Hessa, about 12 years later, as she is like dealing with the consequences of the first book, but also dealing with brand new stakes and brand new issues that are arising. Namely, there is a kind of a war for the throne going on, war for the empire, war for the seat for the emperor, essentially, and she gets approached by one of these people who are trying to be emperor, and basically is asked like, hey, can you help me become emperor? Plus, on top of this, there is also a new threat rising. There is a cult, a very weird cult rising. So this has cults and political stakes and really cool magic and just amazing world building. I believe Hannah Long herself has like compared this to almost a like barbarian Roman type of situation, like barbarians versus the Romans, and we have like a Viking-esque world, and it's just fabulous, and I loved it. 5 stars. Up next, I ended up reading No Fett Gloss by Essa Hansen. This is a really intriguing sci-fi that just feels so colorful when you read it. It, from word go, is breakneck. Like literally first chapter is a full-on massacre, so I will warn you about that. And the beginning was just like the best. Like the first half of the book, loved it. It felt so cool, and like we were on the edge of a really, really interesting journey. The last half of the book kind of fell away from me, but overall I still really liked it, and I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I'm going to be continuing with the series at some point because I do believe the sequel was released this year, like really recently. So we'll be continuing with that. But this one follows our main character, who basically at the beginning is part of this like farm world, and he doesn't know that. He just lives his life every day. He's got a friend who is this little girl who he like protects and stuff. At the beginning of this book, his whole family and his whole community is essentially herded onto these planes because they get told they're going to be taken to a new world because this world that they're on is dead and it's no longer creating stuff for them to, you know, eat and live on. So all of them are like, great, fantastic, let's get on these planes. They get on these planes and then they get dropped off on a new world where as soon as the doors open, they get absolutely brutally massacred by these creatures. And our main guy, he gets covered in the blood of one of these creatures, so it essentially like masks him, and he runs from this massacre happening and whatever, and he ends up hiding in a downed spaceship that is really, really, really cool. There he ends up getting found by a team of people who essentially say, yeah, we'll take you in, we're gonna take you to this, you know, populated area so you can get the help you need because you are deeply, deeply not okay, my guy. And that kind of sets off the chain of events. He's 14, I believe, at the beginning of this, and there's some really interesting, almost like Darrow from Red Rising transformation that this kid goes through. It's neat, and I do suggest you read it. Look up trigger warnings first though, because it is a lot to read the first part of this. But yeah, 3.5 stars. The next book I read was The Queen of Atolia by Megan Wallen Turner. This is the second of the Queen's Thief series, and this is also the last one that I plan on reading because this one was not great. I gave it 2.5 stars. It just wasn't interesting to me, and I don't want to continue with this series, so I'm officially unhauling this whole series off my shelves. So I'm unhauling 4 books of this series. I actually didn't own the full series. I believe there's 6 or 7 of the books. I'm unhauling the ones that I own because I just don't care enough to try anymore. This continues a kind of simple political fantasy that follows Jen, who in the first book is a thief, and he gets tasked to kind of, you know, go on this impossible thieving expedition with this crew of people, and this is a continuation of the events of that book, so I won't spoil you if you care, but 2.5 stars. The next one I read was Shadow Black by Sebastian de Castell. This is again another sequel. This is the sequel to Spellsinger, his first book, and this was fine. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was definitely a good quick read. That's what I love this series for, is the reads are fast-paced and easy to get through, and they are intriguing enough that you want to keep going, but it's not like overly crazy, or I'm not overly attached to any of the characters. I just like it because it has an interesting relationship between the main character and his, like, it's called a squirrel cat, and it's in this world is considered a demon by some people, but other people are just like, it's just a creature that likes to fly in the trees that kind of looks like a massive cat. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah, I like their relationship. They're very funny together, and it's a good time. It's a good time, but there's nothing really crazy about it. The first book follows Kellen, the main character, as he is a mage who's losing his powers, or he's trying to become a mage at the same time that he is losing the ability to use his magic powers. Very interesting, like he has very little magic in a world that is like dominant and depends on magic. So it follows him after the events of the first book. Lots of sequels. The next book that I ended up reading in the month of February was The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. This was very, very interesting. If you guys missed my dual book review, my very first one on my channel, I featured this one and Temple of No Gods. If you want more information on the both of them, go watch that video. This one I ended up giving 4 stars. It was very interesting. Felt like I was watching a movie as I was reading this, so I didn't really get attached to any of the characters, but it was still really cool. I really like the world building, and I really like the woman piratey lady in here. She was just fantastic. Me's just amazing. Go watch that video for more information on this one. Up next, I ended up reading Irobot, which was my friend's book club pick for this month, and I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. It was just fine. This is just solidifying my knowledge of the fact that I don't like short story collections very much. I will like individual short stories a lot, but short story collections always end up being kind of middle of the road for me, and short stories don't have enough teeth for me to really care about what's going on or care about the people or anything going on in the story. So Irobot is it's Isaac Asimov's that connects to 2 different of his series, I believe, the Foundation series and his other one. And there was also a movie made that was based on very loosely on this novella with Will Smith, which is interesting. But yeah. Up next, I DNF'd 2 books. I DNF'd The Tiger's Daughter by K. Arsenault Rivera because I was so bored. I couldn't even tell you what was going on. I was just so bored of the narrative. Like, nothing was happening. The writing was beautiful, but like there was nothing for me to care about. So I DNF'd it. And then I DNF'd 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. Hated it. I got to about page 60 and I wanted to throw it against the wall. I did not sign up for how dry the prose was or how brutal the dogs were to each other, because it's a story about 15 dogs that get animated by Hermes and another god, because they have like a bet going that like if another creature had the sentience and feelings of humans, that they would like have a, you know, terrible life kind of a thing. It was like a philosophy debate. I just didn't like it at all. So I DNF'd it and I'm unhauling it. I don't have it around me. I'm unhauling it from my shelves as well. So I should probably I should probably clarify that a few of these books that I'm talking about today are part of a video that's going to be going up next week for you guys. It's going to be part of the My Friends Pick My TBR. The Queen of Atolia, 15 Dogs, and a few others that I will talk about right now are part of that. I totally forgot that I filmed that video for you guys. So those 2 were part of that. And after that, I ended up reading Empire of Wild by Sherry DeMelin. This one was fine, enjoyable, and easy read. Sherry DeMelin's prose is just so easy to lose yourself in, and she crafts wonderful stories. This is a touch of magic horror thrillery vibe where it's like it follows our main character Joan as she tries to find her husband, who has been missing for about a year, and she ends up finding him, and he has like doesn't remember who he was, and he thinks he's this other person. He's a pastor to this like Presbyterian church. It circles around the myth of the Rougarou, which is really cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, but I gave it 3 stars. So it was fine. It was just generally middle of the road fine. The next one I read for that video was Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq, which I am leaving unrated because I don't know how to rate this. It is a sort of mixed media read. It is poetry and prose and illustrations as well that kind of ruminates on this moment in the main character's life and her, like, it's a little bit of a coming of age story as well, and it ruminates on abuse and I don't really know. It's interesting, and I will warn you for trigger warnings. Look them up, especially rape and infanticide. Look out for that. But yeah, I didn't know how to rate this, so I'm leaving it unrated. Then for that video, things began to kind of turn around from the 2.5 star DNF and unrated, and then the 3 star, I ended up reading one of my favorites ever, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I gave this one 5 stars. It is in a league of its own. It's up there with Starless Sea for me. It gave me the same feelings as Starless Sea. So this has been taking over the internet recently, and if you don't know what it's about our main character, Addie LaRue, who is about to get married, I guess, at the beginning of this, in like 1450 something? No, 1714. She is in a moment of desperation, doesn't want to get married, so she basically makes a deal with the darkness and asks to just have a life and want to be able to live. And so he twists that and says, okay, you can live forever, but no one's gonna remember you. So nobody remembers her for like 300 years, and she lives like basically out of spite, because this guy is like, whenever you're done with your soul, I'll have it. So I'm just gonna make life hell for you. 300 years later, she ends up meeting this guy named Henry, and Henry is the first one who remembers her after she leaves, which is just incredible. I loved this book so much. The ending made me so mad and so happy and so satisfied all at once. Just loved it. But yes, read this one. And then I also read for that video, the last one is Dune by Frank Herbert, which I ended up giving 4 stars. And I have so many thoughts about this one. Very strange. Make sure to watch the video for all my thoughts. All right, so that was the 6 books that I read for that video specifically. In amidst and after that, I ended up reading this little middle grade night books. I ended up giving it 3 stars, very middle of the road. Wasn't anything surprising or crazy, and it was fine. It was just something that I listened to one day at work. And then I ended up reading another 5 star. There's so many 5 stars this month. I love it so much. Another 5 star, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. And Margaret Owen is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors because both of her YA books have been 5 stars for me, and they're just exceptional. This follows Vanya, who at the beginning of this is essentially in the middle of a plot to make a better life for herself. And so she is the granddaughter or goddaughter of Death and Fortune, and she doesn't want to be beholden to them as like a servant essentially for the rest of her life. So she is in the middle of this heist, and she's like taken over Princess Giselle's life and is living her life, and she's also running a like incredible heist behind the scenes. It's great. I loved it. Like at the beginning, she's in the middle of this, and when she leaves, she gets stopped by this other god. I can't remember the god's name, and the god's basically like, bro, you gotta fix your shit. And until you do, you're gonna slowly turn into gemstone, and you have until this day to fix everything. Otherwise, you're just gonna die because your whole body's gonna turn into gemstones, which is why she's got a little ruby on her cheek, which is so cool. I loved the elements of godliness in here and the storytelling elements, and yes. After that, I then read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan, which I hated. And I'm so sad about that because this was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. And I pre-ordered it. I was very excited, and it's just so beautiful. But I got about 200 pages in, and I was just waiting for it to turn around because a lot of people said that the first 150 pages is very slow, and then it like turns around and is amazing. And I was like, great, okay, I will be prepared. I got to page 200, and I started ruminating whether or not I should just DNF it or not. But then I got so mad that I rage finished it. Because this idea and the world building, the idea of the world building is fantastic. It wants to be so beautiful. The execution, not there. Our main character is such a special snowflake. She gets everything handed to her. It's just ridiculous. There's no stakes in here at all. Everything that she does comes so easy to her. She, at the beginning of this, doesn't know how to do anything. And she just gets like dropped off because she's a danger to her mother or something, gets dropped off in the city, and she goes and becomes a handmaiden. And then eventually she weasels her way into a position next to like basically the emperor's son. And the emperor's son falls head over heels in love with her within like days. And she's like, oh my God, you love me? Okay. And he's the most boring, just piece of paper, terrible. Their romance is like supposed to be full of passion. It's not, it's just boring. And then she learns how to be the best archer in the army in about 3 months, which is just not realistic at all. There are moments in here where she, like, the plot should be something like really, really big that the whole plot hinges on. She just gets it handed to her and it's resolved in 4 pages. It made me so physically mad, my guys. No. So that's why it gets 1.5 stars. And it makes me so sad to say that, but oh boy. Then I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which was very cute. It is a little romance about an autistic girl who is a super awesome, very excellent at her job, but she feels like she sucks at sex. So she hires a male escort to teach her the rules of sex, and they fall in love. It's very cute, and it is very steamy. I enjoyed it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I ended up reading The Last Watch by J.S. Dowes, which I really, really enjoyed. This is a new favorite sci-fi of mine. I gave it 4.5 stars. Just blown away by how much I loved this book. It is essentially an end of the universe type of deal where there is a crew of criminals and like the lowest of society that society's just shunted to this ship to get rid of them and forget about them. It's them on this ship realizing that the edge of the universe that they're kind of observing is coming closer to them and messing things up. And so this, like, there's like death-defying stints of like trying to save other ships that are near them and failing. And then there's this whole idea of like this really special crew, like a select few members ending up having to essentially save the universe because they're the only ones available for the job. I love that trope so much. Like, it's like the last team that anyone would expect gets the job to save everybody else. So good. So good. And I'm very excited to read the sequel, which is out, I do believe. The very, very last book that I read in all of February is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. And this has quickly become my favorite book of the year. My guys, like, I have read so many good books this year so far. I had 4 5 stars in this month alone. Temple of No God, one of my favorite books now of all time. Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, one of my favorite books of all time. And Little Thieves, absolutely amazing, 5 stars. This one, 5 stars. If I could give it 6, I would. It's just everything that I wanted. It is low stakes, soft, just vibes, high fantasy world. So it's set in a little medieval town where Viv, our main character, this lovely orc here, decides to hang up her sword from adventuring and decides to open up a coffee shop. And so she does. And it's just that. And it's like the everyday slice of life vibes. And it's everything I wanted in a book. And I didn't realize how much I was gonna love this until I got to the end and I was like, wow, okay, this is exactly what I want. So much so that it has inspired me to write my own soft stakes, high fantasy, like, series like this. So I'm going to. I've already outlined the first book. That's where we're at. So, all right, my guys, that is it. That is everything. Those are all the books that I read in the month of February. It was a crazy, crazy reading month. I had a lot of ups and downs, but a lot of real high highs. Like, I don't know what it is with the month of February, but February has been, not in 2021, but in 2020 and this year, February has been the month where I find like favorite books of all time. If I can just carry this energy into the rest of the year, that would be fantastic because I just want to keep reading amazing books. Let me know down below what your favorite book of the month was that you read because I would love to know. And if you've read any of these books that I mentioned today and if you have any thoughts on them, please let me know as well because I love chatting to you about your ideas and your opinions on books. I will catch you in another video very, very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.